Mastery is strength. When you finally break free from responding to every message, every quiet moment, every reminder of what's happened, something profound starts to awaken in you. You begin to realize that peace isn't found in dominating others, it's found in dominating yourself. Most of us spend so much energy attempting to get someone to see we are worth it, trying to explain, to mend, to persuade them to remain. But the instant you withdraw, the instant you say to yourself, I will not react, I will not chase, I will not beg, that's when you begin to reclaim your power. At the beginning of no contact, silence is punishing, your mind is busy, your feelings are burning, and every fiber of you needs to reach out just to feel some connection. That's where the change starts. When you fight that impulse, it has nothing to do with ignoring a person out of pride or game playing. It has to do with acknowledging that peace is more important to you than attention is. Each time you opt to remain calm rather than respond, you're training your mind in emotional self control. You're saying to your heart, I am safe even when they're gone. That is self discipline and that is strength. Tony Robbins always repeats it's not the events of your life that shape you, the meaning you attach to them. The same holds true here. No contact isn't about loss, it's about reframing meaning. You can view it as rejection or you can view it as redirection. A holy pause where you take a moment to cease pumping energy into what takes away from you and begin putting it back into you. This change doesn't occur overnight. It occurs one peaceful choice at a time. Each time you fight the urge to send that text, each time you release the need for closure, you're developing emotional strength. Consider it. How many times have you given your power over to your emotions? How many times have you allowed someone else's behavior to dictate your peace? True strength is not about acting like you don't care. It's about feeling everything deeply and still managing to act from a place of clarity, not chaos. The individuals that learn to do this type of control are the ones who really develop, for when you're no longer controlled by your emotions, you are invincible. You start functioning from intention rather than from impulse. Within that silence of no contact, you begin to tune back into your own mind again. You start questioning correctly, what do I want? What do I deserve? What do I need in order to heal? The responses trickle in, but they do. And with every passing day, you understand that the storm was never outside of you, it was inside. And your silence, your restraint, your capacity to breathe through the storm is what quiets it. You understand self control is not suppression, it is not acting as if you do not care. It's learning to control your emotions so that they work for you, not against you. It's standing in the middle of heartach and saying, I will not allow this to define me. When you get that right, you are magnetic, not because you're trying to impress someone, but because peace and confidence are incredibly powerful energies. That is why self control is the first and most critical indicator that no contact is effective. You're no longer responding out of desperation or fear. You're responding from a position of strength. And once you experience that kind of inner power, you'll never revert to seeking validation because the fact is, the person who can master their emotions masters their destiny. That's where your true healing starts, in the still moments where you are choosing peace over panic, growth over grief, and power over pain. You're no longer triggered. That's one of the most obvious and most freeing indicators that no contact is actually working. At first, even the slightest reminder of that person could produce a wave of emotion that crashed through you. A song, a location, a random social media post, all of those would hurt. Your heart would constrict. Your head would run through memories like a stuck movie. But with time and keeping yourself committed to your healing, those same things begin to lose their hold on you. What used to make you cry now hardly affects you. That change doesn't indicate that you've forgotten or no longer care. It indicates that you've begun to heal. Initially, your nervous system is conditioned to respond. Every silence registers as rejection. Every day in which you don't receive a message feels like evidence that you're not enough. Healing takes place quietly. However, one morning you wake up and find that you didn't think about them the instant you opened your eyes. One day you scroll by something that reminds you of them and you just keep scrolling. That's growth. That's freedom. It's not loud and dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and incredibly powerful. This phase isn't about faking that you don't care. It's about caring about everything and still being present. You may still recall moments, but they no longer dictate you. The emotional hold fades. The memories no longer haunt and begin to instruct. You can glance back and exclaim, that occurred, but it does not define me anymore. When your feelings no longer yank you into reaction, you start to shift from survival to strength. Tony Robbins always discusses emotional mastery, the power to control how you feel despite what's going on around you. That's precisely what's happening here. You're taking back your emotional autonomy. You're not giving anyone the power to make you happy or unhappy by their presence or absence. That's one of the most profound forms of power, to remain at peace no matter who comes and goes. When you no longer trigger, you begin to view the situation more clearly as well. The haze of attachment starts to clear, and you begin to get what the lessons are. You realize where you overgave, where you disregarded your boundaries, where you put your value into someone else's hands. But rather than judging yourself, you thank those moments for showing you what you needed to learn. That's when true maturity arrives. When wisdom comes from pain, the emotional triggers that had been so overwhelming to you are now signs of your growth. They are reminders of how far you have traveled. You cease to react out of impulse and begin responding mindfully. You no longer check your phone every hour expecting a text. You no longer replay discussions attempting to decipher secret meanings. You just let things be. That letting go is the silent sign of healing, and something lovely occurs. Your energy shifts. You no longer emanate desperation, but peace. You are less concerned with what you lost and more thankful for what you have gained: self-awareness, strength, and emotional clarity. That shift doesn't merely alter what you feel, alters what you attract. Those people who previously misinterpreted your silence as a sign of weakness begin to sense your strength in it. When you're no longer triggered, it means the emotional wounds have started to close. You've stopped bleeding energy into the past. You've stopped needing validation from someone who couldn't see your worth. You've started giving that validation to yourself, and that is when the power finally comes back. When you know that peace is not given to you by anyone, it is something you decide repeatedly. Each time that you choose to not be triggered by what wounded you before, your energy is moving towards self-progress. That is when you know that the no contact process is turning into something life-changing. Initially, your focus is taken by them, what they are doing. If they miss you, if you were right to leave them behind, it is natural. The mind holds on to what it is used to, even if it makes it suffer. With the passage of days and with the silence that envelops, you start to realize something remarkable. The energy you invested in the other person gradually comes back to you. The middle of the night worrying becomes contemplation. The suffering which depleted you begins to energize your development. That is where the magic comes in, when your concentration turns inwards. Initially, the change is subtle. Perhaps you begin taking walks simply to clear your head. Perhaps you take up an old hobby, read a difficult book, set a little aim just to feel on top of things once more. Those simple acts might not seem like much, but they're powerful steps toward reclaiming your identity. You're no longer waiting for someone else to give your life meaning. You're creating it yourself. That's what self-growth looks like. Not an explosion of progress overnight, consistent effort born from self-respect. When your attention turns to you, you come to understand that healing isn't about getting over someone. It's about becoming the person you were supposed to be prior to the pain. You come to understand that the relationship, in whatever way it ended, was a lesson. It taught you what you need, what you value, and what you can never settle for again. The energy that used to go into healing someone else now goes into healing you. You begin to invest in your body, your mind, your tranquility. You learn to like yourself again. A passion is uncovered that reminds you of you, who you are outside of the broken heart. Tony Robbins himself always repeats, where focus goes, energy flows. The moment you cease dwelling on what you lost and begin dwelling on what you can build, your life starts to change. Rather than dwelling on the past, you start building the future. You cease wondering, why did this happen to me? And begin wondering, what can I learn from this? That shift in mindset is the actual indication that no contact is succeeding, because it indicates that you're no longer existing in response to hurt, but towards attainment. You begin to establish new objectives, not in order to prove anything to everybody else, but in an effort to be the best version of yourself. You may find yourself exercising, not out of a desire for revenge, but because you need to feel strong once more. You may immerse yourself in a new learning or endeavor, not as distraction, but as affirmation. I am rebuilding, and with your concentration heightened, you notice you're making progress, small victories that remind you of your strength. The more you become older, the wider your perspective becomes. You learn that the individual you were pursuing earlier was never the reason for your fulfillment. They were simply the reflection of what you felt you required. Now you know that happiness is an internal thing. The quiet of no contact provides room for establishing a relationship with yourself, listening, caring, and healing. That is how you move from pain to power. And soon, without even realizing it, your priorities completely change. You stop looking to see if they've even missed you because you're too preoccupied creating a life that motivates you. You stop craving closure because you've established peace on your own terms. The intensity that previously held you back in the past now propels you toward purpose, self assurance, and inner liberty. That's when you really realize that no contact was not losing someone, it was recovering yourself and knowing that the greatest love story you will ever live is the one you create inside. Peace tastes sweeter than chaos. That's the moment your soul breathes and knows it doesn't need to pursue noise anymore. Silence initially feels suffocating. You crave contact, even if it means arguments or confusion, because at least those moments made you feel connected. Chaos becomes familiar, and in a strange way, it feels safer than the quiet. But as time passes, you begin to taste something different, the calm that comes when you stop trying to control what's out of your hands. It's soft at first, nearly delicate, but it gets stronger every day. You find that peace is not something where nothing is going on. It is something where everything you care about is finally starting to click into place inside of you. During the beginning of no contact, you might feel drawn to speak with the other person just to make the emptiness go away. That emptiness, however, is not loneliness, space. Space to heal, space to truth, space for you. Turmoil you once confused with passion was simply your nervous system responding to emotional turbulence. The highs were thrilling, but the lows were draining. You were on emotional adrenaline. When that ends, peace can seem almost dull until you acknowledge that dull is merely your body remembering the sensation of safety. Peace is not the absence of emotion, it's the control of it. When you discontinue constant drama or attempting to decipher mixed messages, your mind becomes clear. You start sleeping soundly, you start smiling without cause. Your energy is less heavy. You no longer wake up consumed with worry, wondering what will unfold next, because on some deep level you already know whatever will be, you will take care of it. That is what peace does. Peace brings back confidence, stills the noise, and fills confusion with clarity. Tony Robbins always teaches that humans don't want things, they want feelings. You didn't necessarily want the relationship, you wanted what you believed it would make you feel loved, secure, valued. But peace provides all of that without having to rely on someone else to give it to you. When you become peaceful, you cease negotiating your boundaries just to prevent fight. You cease accepting chaos because it is comfortable. You break from confusing emotional upheaval with love. There's a powerful freedom in sitting quietly and knowing that you're not on the roller coaster anymore. The fights that once drained you, the apologies that were never offered, the cycles of hope and despair, they no longer have power over you. Rather than grasping for closure, you grasp for peace. Rather than beating your head on what might have been, you guard your now. You begin to prioritize your emotional and mental health over short term comfort. That's when you start experiencing peace not as a fleeting feeling, but as your new norm. When you make peace your priority, your life starts reflecting that. You see your conversations go deeper, your relationships are more real, and your choices go with your values. You're no longer seeking intensity, you're creating stability. You begin to attract people who feel like peace, not chaos, people who resonate with your energy, not deplete it. The prettiest thing is that peace teaches you strength. It teaches you that you don't have to shout to be heard or fight to be seen. You learn that silence can be louder than any words, and walking away can be the strongest thing you'll ever do. Peace doesn't beg. Peace doesn't argue. Peace just is, and it changes everything it touches. So when peace starts to taste sweeter than chaos, that's how you know no contact is succeeding. You're not longing for the high of emotional drama anymore. You're longing for peaceful mornings, stable days, and quiet nights. You've come to know that love doesn't have to be about survival. You've come to know that peace, true, profound, unshakable peace, is strength. And when you get a taste of it, chaos will never be home again. They feel your absence. And not because you're doing something to make them feel it, because energy does louder than words. When you do at last stop chasing, stop explaining, attempting to prove yourself, something changes in the equation. The silence that weighed so heavily becomes your loudest message. You don't have to post cryptic quotes or depict how glad you are without them. Your energy, peaceful, removed, confident, begins to tell them everything they need to hear. And that's when they feel it, the pressure, your loss, the echo of your energy that isn't there anymore to fuel theirs. It looks initially like they don't care. You may think they haven't called, maybe they've moved on, but here's the truth. People always feel the shift in energy when it's real. When someone was used to having access to your emotions, your attention, your constant care, and suddenly it's gone, they notice it's not about manipulation, it's about vibration. You've stopped radiating need, and that absence creates space. That space makes them face themselves. Tony Robbins always says, the quality of your life is the quality of your energy. When your energy shifts from desperation to self-worth, from chaos to peace, people who once took you for granted can't help but notice the change. They might not tell you, but they feel it in the quiet, in the space, in the confident silence that replaces your old habits. You no longer react instantly to their breadcrumbs of attention. You no longer want validation through reaction. That silence, that restraint, that peace, it becomes magnetic. What makes this phase so powerful is that it's not about getting them to miss you, it's about you no longer needing them to. The intention isn't revenge, it's liberation. You're not withholding communication as a strategy, you're doing it as a statement. I choose myself. And when you really mean it, when you really disconnect, that's when the energy shift is deepest. They can feel that you're no longer emotionally available in the same way, and it discombobulates them. The connection they assumed was there comes to feel tenuous. Irony of no contact is that the more you release, the more they become aware. The instant you give up controlling the outcome is the instant you begin to impact it naturally. Because individuals don't miss frequent contact, they miss the power behind it. They miss the part of themselves they only felt when you were around. They begin recalling your warmth, your laugh, your effort, all the things they didn't appreciate when they were freely available. And your silence makes them face their own emptiness. But here's the deeper truth. Whether they notice or not doesn't matter so much anymore, because by now you've changed. You've moved from questioning if they miss you to understanding that your peace doesn't hang on it. You're not defined by whether someone calls. You're defined by the boundaries you maintain, by the calm you keep, by the life you're rebuilding. And yet, in that power, beautiful occurs. They nearly always see it. It might be a text out of the blue, a social media like a friend reaching out on their behalf. But this time, you don't get the high you used to. You realize it for what it is, acknowledgement, not validation. You learn you don't need their attention anymore to feel complete. That's when you've really won, not when they returned, but when you no longer require them to. When they miss you, it's a testament to your strength, not your weakness. The quiet that previously made you nervous now becomes your armor, and the energy that previously held you back now powers your liberation. They miss you, sure, but more so, you sense your presence. You've filled the emptiness with strength, with clarity, and with peace. That is true transformation when your absence teaches them what your presence used to do, and your silence speaks louder than words ever could. You find clarity, not confusion. That is when you know you're entering a new chapter in emotional freedom. At first, your mind is jumbled. You think about conversations over and over, dissect every word, and try to figure out what went wrong. Disorientation is your new best friend. You crave answers, resolution, affirmation. But the more time you remain in no contact, the mist starts to clear. Your thoughts gradually calm, and what previously was convoluted starts simplifying. The silence that was overwhelming becomes the area where reality finally gets space to speak. Clarity does not materialize suddenly, it reveals itself gradually. One day, you wake up and perceive things differently. You start to understand that love is not meant to be walking on eggshells or trying to guess where you lie. You start to understand that individuals who do care about you, don't leave you in limbo, bring peacefulness and consistency. The no contact distance brings you to a point where you can look at the situation for what it actually was and not for what you wanted it to be. You realize that occasionally love is not sufficient if there is no respect, no effort, and no alignment. Initially, you were confused and pursued answers away from yourself. You said to yourself, if I had one more conversation with them, I'd know. But in reality, what brings clarity is not that next conversation. It is contemplation. It's conceived in quiet moments when you're truthful about what actually occurred. You break from romanticizing the past and begin observing the patterns. You notice where you landed, where you paid attention to red flags, where you gave more than you got. It's not self-blame, it's self-awareness. And that awareness frees you. Tony Robbins instructs that clarity is power. Without it, you stumble through life reacting to emotions. With it, you start to act on purpose. No contact provides you with that gift. It takes the noise, the conflicting messages, the emotional roller coaster, and substitutes them with perspective. You start to see that closure does not happen because they tell you why they did what they did. Closure happens because you see your own. It's the understanding that some people's silence is your answer, and that is sufficient. As you gain clarity, the way you talk to yourself changes. You no longer think, why did they leave me? But instead say, why did I cling for so long? That adjustment is all. You begin to see your strength rather than your hurt. You see that you weren't too much. You were simply giving to someone who wasn't ready to receive. And instead of running after what's lost, you start to work on what's next. Clarity restores your direction. You begin to realize how it all makes sense. All of the heartaches, all of the disappointments, all of the doubts. It all brought you to this place awareness, self-respect, expansion. The you that existed no contact was looking for answers externally. The you that is emerging now knows that peace resides within. You are no longer frantically trying to figure out them. You are busy trying to figure out yourself. Clarity brings peace. You no longer try to fix everyone and begin changing your patterns. You no longer wonder, what if they return, and begin wondering, would I even want them to? That is when you know how far you have traveled. The muddiness that used to obscure your mind has been cleared by wisdom. You see people and circumstances for what they are, not what you wish they would be. And perhaps the strongest piece of all is that clarity brings acceptance. You cease to battle reality and begin to go along with it. You cease to fight the ending and begin to accept the lesson. No contact gave you space. Clarity gave you vision. You finally realize that all that didn't go right was getting you ready for something better. You cease to require answers because you already have the only one that counts, peace. When you discover clarity rather than confusion, that's not healing, that's transformation. You cease surviving the loss and begin building your new life. It's when you see the fog was never present to punish you, it was present to bring you home to yourself. Emotional freedom increases, and that's one of the strongest and most emancipatory indications that no contact is actually effective. At first, your feelings seem to be bound to them. Their messages make you happy, their lack of response makes you sad. You miss them when they don't respond and feel agitated when you can't be with them. With the passage of time, something changes. You come to understand that the peace you sought was never in their hands. It was always inside you. Day by day, slowly, you no longer require someone else to control how you feel. That's emotional freedom, and that's freedom in its purest sense. Being emotionally dependent, you hand over control of your inner world to someone else. Their emotions influence yours. Their decisions manage your energy. But when you start detaching during no contact, you begin to reclaim that power. You learn that your emotions belong to you, not to the person who hurt you, not to the one who left. You begin to understand that love doesn't mean losing yourself. It means sharing yourself from a place of fullness, not emptiness. At first, it's not easy. You'll find yourself grabbing for your phone, seeing if they looked at your stories, if they miss you. But after a while, those things phase out. You no longer wait for their message because you're busy living your life. You understand that your peace of mind doesn't rest on someone's response. You no longer base your self-worth upon someone's attention. You begin to feel complete by yourself, and that is when everything shifts. Tony Robbins has said many times, quality of your life is determined by the quality of your emotions. And when you own your own emotions, you no longer remain a captive of circumstance. No contact teaches you this in the most basic and authentic manner. You learn to sit in your feelings rather than running from them. You allow yourself to feel the loneliness, the anger, the sadness, but you don't allow the feelings to dictate your actions. You breathe through them, you work through them, and you emerge above them. That's emotional strength. Emotional independence isn't about no longer caring or about building walls. It means you don't fall apart anymore when people let you down. You can love hard and remain centered. You can miss someone and still choose yourself. You can be compassionate without being bossed around. It's about balance, being attuned to your emotions without being controlled by them. By the time you get to this stage, you stop attracting draining relationships because you do not need anyone to fill up a void in you anymore. The most empowering thing about this phase is the way you feel. You begin waking up with calmness rather than panic. You begin making choices based on what is best for you rather than what will get someone's attention. You begin to trust yourself again. That inner security is what shines through in everything you do. Your work, your relationships, your energy. You walk differently because you finally see that your worth isn't based on who picks you. It's based on how deeply you choose you. As your emotional independence increases, your boundaries become firmer. You no longer accept behaviors that disturb your peace. You no longer pursue closure from individuals who are unable to provide it. You don't try to mend others anymore because you're too busy taking care of yourself. That adjustment is attractive. It attracts individuals who honor your peace rather than challenging it. And soon you'll find yourself at a place where your feelings are level. Their silence no longer stings. Their presence no longer fills you with anxiety. You're not looking for completion. You're whole. The emptiness that used to gnaw at you is now filled with purpose, courage, and peace. That's when you know the no contact process has worked. Not because it altered them, but because it changed you. Emotional independence is not about being cold or distant. It's about being so grounded in yourself that no storm can shake your center. It's knowing that you are your own safe place. It's the moment you realize you don't need anyone to save you. You've already saved yourself. You set healthier boundaries, and that's when no contact transforms from a temporary act into a lifelong standard. Initially, boundaries can feel awkward, even unnatural. If you were accustomed to giving more than you got, perhaps you were the one who always forgave too easily, who over-explained, who lingered even when your heart knew it was time to leave. But as you mature through the silence, something changes. You come to understand that guarding your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. You start to see boundaries not as walls that keep people out, but as gates that decide who gets to come in and how they're allowed to treat you. In the early days of no contact, the boundary is simple. You stop engaging. You cut off communication to heal, to find your balance again. It is difficult, even painful, since boundaries tend to provoke feelings of guilt in individuals who were taught that love was equivalent to self-denial. You may be thinking, what if they think I don't care? Or perhaps I must tell them one more time. But over time, you come to know that the compulsion to justify oneself is merely another attempt at seeking approval. Boundaries need not be justified, they need conviction. Tony Robbins is known to say, you get what you tolerate. That is truth that shines brightly as you become stronger. You begin to notice how many times you tolerated disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional manipulation, not because you didn't notice it, but because you didn't want to lose them. But now, with space, you come to realize losing your peace is worse than losing someone. You cease to contort yourself into spaces that no longer fit. You cease to negotiate your value for scraps of attention. That is what it means to set healthier boundaries, quiet, assertive, self-respecting. As your healing becomes more profound, your concept of love starts to shift. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy or chaos for connection. You realize that healthy love does not demand that you leave yourself behind. So you learn to say no, not out of anger, but out of awareness. You learn to say no to mixed signals, no to emotional games, no to one-sided relationships. And every no becomes a holy act of self-love. You begin to see that each time you defend your peace, you affirm your power, these boundaries begin to expand beyond that one relationship. You start applying them everywhere, in friendships, in family dynamics, even in the way you speak to yourself. You no longer let guilt make your decisions. You begin to gauge every interaction by a simple measure. Does this bring me peace or chaos? That clarity becomes your compass. As time goes on, you realize that individuals react differently to your new boundaries. There are those who respect them and those that push back against them. The ones who really care for you will adapt, but the ones that benefited from your absence of boundaries will fall by the wayside. And rather than pursuing them, you let them drift away because you've discovered that guarding your peace is more important than pleasing anyone else. The most liberating aspect of this phase is the self-respect that increases with each boundary you establish. You no longer have to scream so that people can hear you or struggle so that people can see you. You express your limits through consistency, not confrontation. Your silence speaks 1,000 words because it's based on self-worth. You understand at last that boundaries are not about controlling other people. They're about instructing the world how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. And then one day strikes you, the calm you now experience is the direct product of the boundaries you previously dreaded setting. You no longer accept what used to suck your energy away. You no longer feel guilty about putting yourself first. You see that genuine love, whether from others or yourself, can only be where respect is the starting point. That's what makes this phase so amazing. You've made your pain into a policy, one that guards your heart, respects your growth, and keeps your life on track with peace. You take back your power the moment you no longer wait for them to return, to apologize, or to get why your pain hurts. This is the place where you understand that healing is not about getting even, it's about getting free. For so long, perhaps you've given your energy away in repeated overanalyzing, explaining, or attempting to validate yourself with someone who did not care. But as no contact persists, something amazing occurs. The energy that previously radiated outwards begins to return to you. The same energy you formerly spent pursuing validation now drives your belief in yourself, your confidence, your sense of direction. You begin to survive and begin to rise. In the beginning, does not feel strong at all. It feels burdensome, as if you have lost control. You may feel helpless, uncertain, and gripped by what ifs. But each time you fight the temptation to break no contact, you are building your internal strength. Each time you opt for silence over reaction, you are conditioning yourself with emotional discipline. What you're actually doing is taking back your power choice by choice, because true power doesn't derive from controlling other people. It derives from being in command of yourself. Tony Robbins has said many times, the moment you make a new decision, your life changes. That decision to no longer beg for love, to no longer pursue closure, to no longer accept disrespect is the moment your life changes. You come to see that your own happiness was never in their control. It was always in yours. The relationship has ended. The lesson is still there. You are in charge of your own peace, your own energy, your own direction. That alone is what transforms pain into purpose. Taking back your power is about no longer being a victim of your narrative. You no longer utter, they did this to me, but instead say, this taught me something. That change in thinking is what turns heartbreak into growth. You start to realize that the pain was never intended to destroy you, it was intended to awaken you. It pushed you to remember who you are, someone strong, capable, and deserving of better than emotional crumbs. And as your strength comes back, it starts to manifest in all aspects of your life. You talk differently, with confidence, with calm. You walk taller because you no longer bear the burden of having to be selected. You begin to make goals again, take care of yourself, and create a life that's a reflection of your value. You understand that all the effort you used to put into them is now put into rebuilding you. The energy that was dispersed is now concentrated, and that makes you magnetic. People may start to notice this new energy. Some might be drawn back to it, others might be intimidated by it. But for the first time, you're not doing any of it for them. You're not proving, performing, or pretending. You're simply a being, grounded, centered, and whole. That's what true power feels like: quiet, unshakable confidence that doesn't need validation. Taking back your power is also about forgiving not them, but yourself. You release resentment, not because they're worthy, but because you are. You cease to let their choices take up space in your heart. You cease to let the past determine your future. You begin using your pain as fuel for progress, working out, creating, learning, growing. You use what was intended to destroy you as the fuel that constructs you. And someday you'll glance back and remember that the you who used to beg for answers was only waiting to recall their own power. The silence that intimidated you became your heaven. The heartbreak that once defined you became your rise. That's what taking back your power truly is: turning everything that was supposed to break you and using it to climb higher. You no longer ask permission to continue. You no longer wonder, will they regret losing me? Because you already know your value doesn't depend on their acknowledgement. You've reclaimed your power, not through vengeance, but through peace. And once you do that, no one can ever take it away from you again. You feel free, really profoundly, unapologetically free. That's the last and strongest indication that no contact has been successful. The heavy load in your chest is lifted. The thoughts that once dominated you now drift through your mind like clouds across the sky, visible, but no longer driving you. You wake up in the morning feeling that familiar pang no more. You smile because you want to, not because you're just faking. You've let go. Not because you remembered, but because you've forgiven. You've come to peace with the past, and you've let your heart be open to the future. Freedom doesn't feel how you thought it would. It's not boisterous or dramatic. It's quiet. It's the stillness that comes with knowing you can be alone and still be complete. It's when you cease waiting for closure, cease to require validation, and cease to identify yourself by who departed or who remained. You no longer glance at your phone hoping for a message. You no longer replay memories hoping to find meaning. You've come to realize that some chapters end not because you failed, but because you outgrew them. This sort of liberty is consequential because it alters everything. It alters the manner in which you walk, speak, love. You're no longer holding on to people because you're afraid. You're connecting from a place of abundance. You're no longer looking for someone to make you whole. You're creating a life that echoes your wholeness. You've learned peace isn't something you seek in another person, it's something you cultivate within yourself. Tony Robbins states, "The secret to happiness is progress." And this freedom, peace you now enjoy, is evidence of that progress. You've progressed from pain to power, from chaos to calm, from heartbreak to healing. The silence that once shattered you has now constructed you. The distance that once wounded you has now liberated you. You've emerged someone more resilient, more astute, more empathetic, not despite what occurred, but because of it. You're free now, not only from them, but from the version of you that required them. You've entered into your power, you've reclaimed your peace, and now it's time to share that power with the world. If this message resonated with your heart, if you felt even a glimmer of truth in these words, then don't bottle it up. Hires like this video to remind yourself how far you've come. Undefined. That's share it with someone who needs to hear that their pain can become power. Undefined. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful messages that feed your growth, your peace, and your purpose. Undefined. And don't forget to press the bell icon so you never miss another video that could shift your mindset and change your life. Remember this, peace is not the absence of pain, it's the presence of power. You've earned your freedom, you've built your peace, you've turned silence into strength. This is your time to rise, free, fearless, unstoppable.